Today on Rates and Barrels, we break down a few games from Monday's slate with some significant playoff implications, including an impressive performance from Kyle Bradish in Anaheim.
We dream on the Marlins. Could they be buyers? Could they be sellers? Could they be both? And could they do it with the Giants?
And we've been wondering all season long, when will the Mariners pull away in the AL West? We dig into the Mariners with Ryan Divish of the Seattle Times. Welcome to Rates and Barrels. It's Tuesday, June 23rd. Derek Van Riper, Eno Saris, Britt here. On this episode, we dig into some games we were watching on Monday night. We had a really big game between the Yankees and Tigers. We had a Braves-Padres game. We wanted to watch Cubs-Mets. That got rained out, so we kind of pivoted to Orioles-Angels for a little bit of a deep dive. Some other stuff going on around the league, though. Good news. We'll start with some good news. Elly back Tuesday. Happy for that. Glad to see Elly back, coming off the hamstring injury. It's been about 3 weeks. Reds haven't played very well without him. And they just opened a series on Monday night with the Brewers. Brandon Woodruff came back and looked like post-shoulder injury Brandon Woodruff again, which was great news. Carried a no-hitter into the sixth. Was touching 94 at the end of that outing. 6 innings, 6 scoreless innings, 1 hit ball, 10 Ks. Good news there, too. Brady Singer pitched well on the other side of that one. For Eno, that was a scoreless game entering the 10th inning. And you know why it was a scoreless game entering the 10th inning? It wasn't just the pitching performances. It's because yesterday on this very show, we talked about the drag on the ball changing and our expectations that the ball is going to fly uncontrollably as a result of changes. That is why yesterday was a low-scoring night around the league, Eno.
Yeah, that was pretty exciting. I think I also want to clarify, there was a good post in the Discord about Joey Cantillo's changes. The cutter is new, and I forget what else. He discovered some stuff about his extension. So maybe I dismissed Joey Cantillo too quickly. But yeah, Brady Singer came through for us, and we'll see. I still think the offense is coming. That drag chart says we're going into 2019 right now.
Well, and there's some questions about the drag chart maybe getting paused. I saw that starting to bubble up too. So I hope this doesn't mushroom cloud its way into some kind of bigger scandal. Like I don't need that right now, Britt. I don't need any more scandals. I just want to lock in on games day to day without concerns about the baseball being this super happy fun ball again the way it was in 2019.
Death, taxes, and Eno Saris on the baseball beat, guys. Those are just the 3 constants in life, my friends.
True.
You know, every time I think Eno can hang up the old spikes and say sayonara to the baseball beat, the actual literal baseball beat comes back up. I saw that tweet a couple days ago. I was like, here we go again. Eno's on it.
This is
Here
so
goes.
weird, actually.
What?
They do have a dot up for June 22nd, and it is the highest dot of the last 2 weeks. So last night, for some reason, we had almost 2025 drag. Oh my God, what is going on with this ball?
I mean, in some respects, we always expected the offense to pick up as the weather gets hotter, right? In places. Offense does always pick up in the second half. But some of the stuff that Eno is referencing is more than just the, hey, it's starting to get humid in some places kind of deal, which is unfortunate. I hope it doesn't. It's interesting because, as you pointed out in your tweet, MLB owns the company that makes the baseballs.
Yeah, right.
So I also just as you know, I've done some of this reporting with you, and it's incredible to me how much we talk about the baseballs and how it seems little control they have over making them all exactly the same. It's 2026, and we still just can't, we could send people, wasn't it some executive that was like, we could send people to the moon, but we can't figure out baseballs? Kind of where we are. It was a great quote. I know who it is. I just don't know if that was on the record. I can't remember if it was on the record or not, so I won't out you, but an incredible line because I think about that all the time. It lives rent free in my head. We can send people to the moon, but we can't figure out a way to make sure that the baseballs stay the same and untouched. which of course leads its way to a scandal DVR. I agree. Not a scandal, but a controversy, some drama. Let's face it, the pitchers are way ahead of the hitters, right? The way that data and technology has helped pitching more so than hitting. And I have a story coming kind of on the other side of tech and kind of what teams are trying to do there, because there's just not the same amount of, I don't want to say innovation, because they're trying, but there's just not the same amount of strides that we've seen on the hitting side of things than the pitching, which has really exploded in the information age. And they're just so far ahead of the hitters. And you're seeing that. And you're seeing that in approaches to the game. And you're just, did you guys see the Nolan Ryan quote in the Mizrowski story that Jason Stark had? The hitters will
Which
go
one
up
is that?
there and he basically said hitters will go up there, they'll strike out 3 times, then they'll hit a home run and act like they did something special, which is like so 2026 offense, right? But
But they
anyway,
did do something special. They
Yeah,
hit a
I
home
kind of
run.
think they did. Like
They
Would you
did.
rather have?
but
Would
they
you
struck
rather
out
have
3 times
Austin
before that.
Riley hitting like 3 singles or 2 singles and not scoring? I don't know.
I don't know, but it is interesting. Like that is the game 2026 in a nutshell.
In the game that I watched, the Padres game, they were saying, "Oh, it was a great game for Austin Riley because he did have 3 singles." But I was thinking not only from a perspective of, well, he didn't really impact the game because he didn't drive it in, or he didn't score himself, but also like, are you locked in when you're hitting singles? Or are you locked in when you're hitting like higher line drives, even if they're getting caught? Like when you see a single, you're like, that's kind of mishit.
Well, what kind of single? Sometimes it's a 400-foot single.
Yeah, his were more
Kinda
like
single.
the million hoppers. He was hitting like million hoppers, and you're like, I don't know. That just happened to find a spot. I don't know how healthy. I didn't come away from that game being like, oh, Austin Riley's fixed. He's about to go on a tear.
Think we, especially for a power hitter like Riley, are going to be a little underwhelmed by a 2 single game, right? That's just sort of the nature of our expectations being misaligned with the reality of how difficult it is to hit in the big leagues. I think the question I have for you is a few things. We were talking about Didier Fuentes, and I suggested the possibility that because of past innings restrictions from injuries, that they would slowly stretch him out later on this year if they need him as a starter. He came in the 5th, threw 4 pitches, struck 1 guy out, and was done. Like, I just thought that was a really bizarre usage decision for Didier Fuentes in a very low-scoring game.
Yeah, it's pretty strange. Last year, he put together 60 innings. So you'd say, well, if he's going to be a reliever, then at least he could be a reliever, like a 60-inning reliever. But right now, he has 29 innings, and he, like you said, he just got used in a really small spot. I think one of the things that might be difficult is that he's just too valuable in that spot right now. Like, yes, it was only 4 pitches, but it was a big spot, and he looked like pretty dominant in that moment, and they were talking about how important he was. And if you look at this bullpen, they use Karinchak, but Fuentes is better than Karinchak. And like, if you count sort of Fuentes, Lee, Suarez, and Iglesias, then you've got a really solid 4. And I think Fuentes is just really important to them that way. So I do actually think he'll just end up, maybe he'll pitch 2 or 3 innings in the playoffs, but I think he'll be a middle of the staff type of guy. But my general takeaway from this game, that was a 1-0 game, was that I wasn't sure if I was watching good offense or good pitching. You have Michael King on the bump, and like by strikeouts and walks, he looked good. But if you look at this spray chart that I'm putting up right now, his sweepers and his changeups were all over the place, and not even grouped by movement. There's a lot of sweepers that kind of caught and went far, and then there were some that didn't. There were some that dropped more. There's some changeups that just caught and went and like were nowhere close to the plate. I didn't think the changeup was like in good spots. I thought it was like in good spots like 2 or 3 times in the game, and he threw like 15. So the against lefties, I was on the edge of my seat for King because his sweeper kind of goes right into their bat path, and I thought this could be someone could end this shutout any second. And if you look at the spray chart of where his balls went, Jackson Merrill was busy. Merrill took away maybe a homer, but at least a double. And then there was like 4 or 5 more catches that he made that were right, in the spot where, hey, if it was the crazy drag ball, it might have gone out. If it was a warmer night at Petco, it might have gone out. So it was just one of the things where Petco and a surprisingly bad Braves offense. I began wondering, like, is this as good of an offense as I thought it was to begin with? And is there a little bit of weakness from the left side? Their big left side hitter, obviously Matt Olson, right? But let's say you as a pitcher are like, okay, I'm going to walk Matt Olson. Who else is going to hurt you? It has to be Drake Baldwin, and he's in the middle of a big slump, his first big slump of his career. So, if he's slumping and you walk Matt Olson, basically, then you can get through this lineup as a righty pretty easily, right now at least. We'll see if that continues. It may just be a Phillies type month for them. But, if you look at Grant Holmes' spray chart, he also threw, 10 or 15 sliders in the dirt, that weren't really competitive. And I think that was because he threw one slider to Manny Machado that was too high and Machado deposited in the seats. That was the entire offense of the game. Manny Machado hitting a hanging slider into the seats.
He's been better quietly.
Yeah, he's getting a bit better, and the power's been there all along. It's just been, the batting average, worst batting average among qualified regulars. But my last takeaway was when we talk about like sweet swings, people talk often about like Kenny Griffey Jr.'s sweetest swing, but just that lovely kind of scoopy left-handed swing that finishes high, just a really beautiful swing. And so I was thinking a little bit about the aesthetics of a swing, and I've always thought Manny Machado's swing is really, really pretty, and it's flatter. It's not a scoopy Ken Griffey swing. But it looks so effortless. Like his bat speed is really high and it looks so effortless. And that's a big part of Manny's game is that kind of that smile. He has a little bit of that Andrew Jones. I'm smiling while I'm playing, I'm blowing bubbles. This isn't bothering me. Like I like it. Actually, I like it. I like when a player just looks like it's effortless and it's like smooth and effortless. I have some love for like what I call the fire plugs, the fire hydrants, the Harrison Baders of the world, where it looks like they're trying as hard as they can to swing that bat, but it also kind of looks cool on the other extreme when the guy he just swings the bat 78 miles an hour and it looks like he's taking a practice swing. So those are some of my takeaways from the Braves-Padres game.
We are going to hit a quick break. When we come back, we'll dig into Orioles-Angels. Is Kyle Bradish turning a corner here in June? Welcome back to Rates and Barrels. Quick point of clarity before we get to Orioles-Angels. Fire hydrant, of course, is complimentary. One quick note on the recent struggles of the Atlanta lineup. They are 27th in WRC Plus over the last 30 days, having a similar run to what the Phillies have dealt with throughout the entire first half. I don't think you believe in either case that it's necessarily indicative of who these teams are going to be when the dust settles at the end of the season. But for the entire year, the Braves are now tied for 10th in WRC Plus with the Twins and Giants, which is still a little bit worse than you would expect. Acuna has been on the IL twice. Baldwin was on the IL and came back and has been in that slump that Eno mentioned. So contextually speaking, there's a couple of keys that have not been completely healthy, but you can look at the bottom half of that lineup, the questions at shortstop where Jorge Mateo's playing a bit more right now, and say, yeah, they probably need one more quality bat to get up to the level of a higher end playoff caliber lineup. But most of that help comes back from the IL at some point with Ronald Acuna Jr. and Britt. As you were saying, ever since we discussed Manny Machado, I think it was 2 weeks ago now, after his anti-analytics rant, last 14 days, 277, 340, 617, 3 homers, 160 WRC plus. I know he doesn't want to hear that last number, but he's looking more like Manny after that stretch where the Padres just saw a ton of really good pitching for the better part of the first 2 months of the season.
Yeah, he is. I watched a little of that game too. I wanted to watch the Mets game, guys, but there were storms up and down the East Coast. including here at my house, and that game was a no. So I did watch the Orioles-Angels, and not exactly a barn burner on the schedule, right? The Angels are the worst team in the American League, one of the worst teams in baseball. They should be sellers at the deadline. However, Artie Moreno may not let them be sellers. Remember a couple years ago when he famously blocked a little guy named Shohei Ohtani, who would have netted them some prospects. It kind of seems like Artie's up to Artie's being Artie again. Doesn't seem like he's gonna let them trade some of their better trade chips like Joe Adell, Reed Detmer. We know Mike Trout's going nowhere. He's also hurt. Which I know is unfortunate. Seems like it happens every year. I think on the Orioles side of things, Kyle Bradish, like if he had faced a major league opponent, he'd be really impressed with the 8 scoreless innings. A little bit like take it with a grain of salt because you're against the Angels, who, as I mentioned, have been pretty terrible. And I think people are kind of worried or wondering, not worried, are the Orioles going to be buyers or sellers? The more I think about this, the more I lean toward the fact that they're absolutely not going to be sellers. You guys look at it today. Fangraphs has them over 30% chance of making the playoffs. They're right in the thick of the playoff hunt. Like they haven't had a huge tear. They haven't won more than 3 games in a row. They also haven't lost more than a handful of games in a row. So they still are this team that, as we sit here in late June, are grappling for an identity. But all they really need is a hot week to claim that last wild card spot. So I don't think, like as good as Kyle Bradish has been for their rotation, I don't think they would trade him away. I don't think they would trade Taylor Ward, who they just acquired this offseason. Like I don't think they would do any of those things because they're at a point where they can't really sell a rebuild, right? Even a retool doesn't make a whole lot of options. They have to push their chips in and kind of hope that they do something here and that this offense finally can consistently get hot. The pitching, of course, is going to have to be something that carries them if they're going to reel off 12 of 14 or something crazy like that. If they have that in them, they're going to have to get better. But also, guys, I don't know if you saw this, but because Jackson Holliday is hurt and Blaze Alexander had an injury, I don't know if you saw who played third base, but it was Leody Tavares. Like basically Craig Alvarez was like, who wants to play third? And Tavares was like, I do. And career, veteran in the outfield, all of a sudden he's playing third base. It's funny. It's a funny storyline. It's also a little indicative of their injury issues. And I covered extensively as an organization how they seem to be hurt a lot and on the IL a lot. Jackson Holliday just can't seem to get healthy, stay healthy, be a productive big leaguer right now. And, I think it's not great when you're here in, again, late June, you're a team that is trying to go for it. You're trying to not be in the seller category. And you're basically like open auditions for who's going to play the hot corner, right? Like that's not great for depth. I think they're going to have to make it. And Kobe Mayo was the DH, so they couldn't have had Kobe Mayo play there. They would have lost the DH. I think they need to make a decision on what's going to happen with Jackson Holliday. You can't keep holding guys out. I would expect a decision on that. They have more games against the Angels, so they have a chance to get closer to 500. They're coming off a series win against the Dodgers. So I think the Orioles are in this position where they are going to largely stand pat. Are they going to be huge buyers? No, I don't really see that either. And historically, Mike Elias has not had big deadlines. He hasn't gone out and got big pieces. The biggest thing they did was the Corbin Burns trade, and that was an offseason move. So I think you're going to see like nibbles around the corners to try to stay in it, hope that this team gets it going. I just don't think they're in a position where they can say, hey, we're going to get rid of all these guys and go for it again next year. This team was kind of built to win now. It was built to win 3 years ago, and they still haven't won. They don't have a playoff win since 2014. Not the longest in baseball, though. That would belong to the Angels. Poor Mike Trout is never getting out of there. So these were the thoughts I had last night watching that game. And also, what else I was thinking was that the Angels' entire coaching staff, Kurt Suzuki, who I covered as a player, they're all on 1-year deals. How insane is that? And also, how can you get guys better knowing that next year it's going to be somebody else? The last year it was somebody else. Like, I know the Angels, like, we shouldn't even devote time to them until they sell and become like a real actual big league organization. However, I was just thinking, like, imagine being a guy in that dugout. You're getting your butt kicked every night. You're just getting your brains beat in. You've got a first-year manager. You've got all these guys who are on 1-year deals. Like, what is the vibe there? Is there a vibe there? Or is it like, God, I can't wait to get traded out of here?
Every man for himself. Yeah, like you're just trying to put up good enough stats to
get out of
noticed or get out of there. Yeah.
Yeah. Just sad. It's just unfortunate.
It does remind me a little bit of some of those bad Oakland teams where, some of those guys are happy they're getting their first chance. Like Vaughn Grissom can't be that mad, right? Like he's getting his first chance at every day at bats, and he's proving that he has something that he can do in the big leagues, whether it's utility or whatever it is. But he's getting that chance. So sometimes it can actually lead to decent camaraderie because everyone's like, man, we suck, but like at least we're getting a chance, at least we get to get out there and show them something.
But Oakland always had a coaching staff that wasn't in total disarray. I think it hurts the players' development, right? Like, what if you were with a team that used the numbers and had more of the tech and the data? Like, how much better would these guys be? Imagine
not every Oakland coach used the numbers.
But they didn't have. I can't remember a year where Oakland was on their manager was on a 1-year deal and their entire coaching staff was as well.
Yeah, that's crazy. You're right.
And also,
I think what I did see in Oakland that might be happening is that sometimes the players end up coaching each other. So they'll if there are some players that are like well versed in analytics or know some stuff, then the other players will kind of gather around them and be like, "What do you see here? Like, what's going on here?" So like I've definitely seen that before.
It's not bad, but I think it helps if you have more eyes and ears and brains working on the problem together. That's all.
Yes.
You have those spots. You have the opportunity to bring in that help. A lot of this has to do with aligning those contracts with front office leadership, but at the same time, foresight's not really a strength of the organization either. Like we've known this for a long time.
But is Mination's contract is up?
Yeah. Yes. They're tied together.
I think that's why it was Suzuki as the manager. It's first-time manager, 1-year deal. I think that's part of how all this came together.
It's insane, though, if you think about it. Like,
yeah,
borderline insane. Like, imagine, this is what I thought last night. Imagine you get signed DVR. It's your dream. You're a big league player by the Angels. Now you've got how many years? Like right now, your formative years in player development are with the Angels. You come up, but it doesn't matter. You're so good. You don't really need that shoddy player development. You come up and you're in the big leagues. And like, it would have helped if you had better coaches and a better system and whatever. You're still good, but you're missing that. Like in the big leagues, like the margins matter so much. You're missing all that coaching. You're missing all that development. Yeah, eventually you'll get out of that system. Maybe you'll get traded away, but what if you don't? Eventually, maybe you reach free agency, DVR, but a lot of your formative years were already ruined and wasted there.
Yeah, I think it does lead people to go outside. Like I know Joe Adele went to Driveline. It was did a big revamp a couple off seasons ago. So
yeah, and now Artie won't trade him. I mean, unbelievable. You could play really well, and Artie can say, "Hey, you're staying here."
Yeah, right. We need you. We need you to lose. The other interesting thing here was that Cal Bradish's curveball, which was good in Seattle, was the best it had been all year in Seattle, retained that shape and was good again. So Cal Bradish looked like an ace that night. I didn't get to watch it. Did he look like an ace? He looked like an ace in the numbers.
He did, but again, it's like hard. Would he have done that against the Dodgers? Would he? You know what I mean? Like it's hard. He had great. The stuff looked great. The swings were like off of him, looked uncomfortable. He did a great job mixing, but it's always hard to judge against a team that is just one of
just
the worst
because
in
like
baseball.
even the like he can see that they're the Angels. Like he knows who they are. Like he's more likely to be in the zone, and he's more likely to have the confidence to stay in the zone as opposed
challenge
to
guys.
Nibbling and stuff.
Yes. He's not facing Freeman, Betts, Ohtani, right? So it's a little bit different. And Trout is hurt, as we mentioned. So he did look good. The Orioles are going to need him to be an ace because they very much relied on him at the top of the rotation this winter. There was a lot of pressure on him to be ace-like. I'd like to see it repeated, but of course you'd rather have that than like a 5-inning, 4 runs thing against the Angels. So it looked good.
Yeah, his velo was up too. He was at 95. So
it looked encouraging. But again, and I think the Orioles are in a situation where they just cannot be sellers at the deadline. They can't. They're close.
And also like the things they need are probably too expensive at the deadline that the LA's not going to do them. Like they would it would be great to give them a number 2.
Yes.
They kind of have like a back end number 1 in Bradish. I'm sorry, he's not a front end number 1. They kind of have a back end number 1 in Bradish, and then they have like a couple of 3s and 4s and 5s. So like an actual number 2 would be a big deal. But I think in the absence of that, either he goes and gets maybe a a starting pitcher, just like, an available starting pitcher that's not great, but might be better than their number 5.
Like
Or
Rogers a couple years ago, like a reclamation project.
yeah, but I bet you not anything big. I agree with you on that.
Maybe some bullpen pieces because the bullpen isn't quite as dominant as their teams were in 23-24.
Yeah.
But again, this isn't a team that's like built to win the World Series as it stands right now. Though I don't know, crazier stuff has happened, right? You got to roll the dice and get in. That's how teams think. And I think they're going to keep pushing towards being able to roll the dice.
I mean, yeah, could it be that crazy that to see them kind of put together a Rangers type run where like, yeah, their starting pitching isn't that great, yeah, their bullpen isn't that great, but the lineup got hot and like meshed at the right moment, and like all of a sudden we're like, oh yeah, this is the Orioles we thought,
I think that's exactly what you would want to tell yourself. And I don't think it's completely lacking like elements of reality. I mean, the offense is so far this year, it's a 104 WRC plus. It's a top 10 lineup. The keys that we talked about a while back, Bradish was among them, getting Trevor Rogers to be a competent mid-rotation guy, at least fixing your A bullpen. Helsley was hurt before, getting him back certainly helps. They have flaws, but they're not flaws that are impossible to overcome. And given how flat the AL wildcard picture is right now, anything is still possible at this point. So I think you want to try and stay on the optimistic side if you can, even though you're probably pretty frustrated if you're an Orioles fan because this isn't quite what the larger window was supposed to look like. It wasn't supposed to be this difficult. Also, one last thing on Bradish. Did you guys remember that he was drafted by the Angels and traded to the Orioles in the Dylan Bundy deal?
Only because they mentioned it last night on the
goodness.
broadcast.
I had forgotten about that.
I had to.
Yeah, on the broadcast, sure. But I was not thinking about that a lot. Like I was just, oh yeah, that's right. He fourth round.
But that wasn't an
Angels.
Elias trade. That was pre-Elias, right?
Bundy?
That was in 2019.
Bundy?
December of 2019.
Then? That was an Elias trade.
That should be Elias, yeah.
It was Elias.
That's
Elias took over
trade.
in 18,
Well
end of 18. Yeah.
Really
remember
well
Dylan Bundy?
done.
That was another can't miss prospect who did not have the career people thought. Him and Kevin Gossman were like 1A, 1B in the Orioles like hierarchy of pitching prospects, and Kevin Gossman's still pitching. Remarkable career that he's had. And Dylan Bundy just never could put it together the way, people thought he would.
I think health
so
was a big part of that.
It was. So just like, this game is littered with these can't miss pitching prospects who miss, right? And I think we sit here and we like salivate over what's coming, but there are so many stories about guys who they come, we largely forget about their careers, and that's that. It's unfortunate.
So there's one more team I think we should talk about here, and it's the Marlins. They've been surging.
Yeah.
They may have had, according to the broadcast, the largest crowd in ballpark history on a Monday because Scotland has an upcoming World Cup game in Miami. And there were a ton of Scottish fans in the yard, so it was a very different atmosphere at Marlins Park on a weeknight, especially. They're 14-6 in their last 20. They did lose 4-3 to Texas in the series opener on Monday night. But here's a stat that really surprised me. They're 40-39 on the season, so they're 1 over 500. Pythagorean record we talk about all the time. It's based on your run differential. They're 1 below 500, but not ridiculous, right? A 1 over 500 record, pretty deserved. Clay Davenport's third order record suggests they have been actually really unlucky, should be closer to a 43 win team, and on a similar level to Atlanta. We know Atlanta's had a lot of late walk-off wins, and those are the kinds of things that are not necessarily sustainable. It's a great thing to be able to do it. They're fun. We love walk-offs, but it's the kind of thing that the math's always going to say, yeah, that's great, but that's not the sustainable way to win over a full season. So, like, what are you thinking if you're running the Marlins right now? Are you thinking that you want to try and it's not necessarily, it's either super cheap rentals, like the guys that no one actually wants that bad, that don't really impact your future and could just be useful pieces that round out your roster, or it's more just saying, well, people are actually taking calls right now and we can trade something pretty good long-term for something else that helps us long-term. And it's not necessarily about 2026 only, but it's about these next couple of seasons as well. Like, do you think either one of those paths are one that they're going to seriously consider as the deadline approaches?
I think they're going to look at expiring contracts. And if that helps the team get better for this year, and beyond, they're going to do it. Like, if you look at Fangraphs, I think they have a 14% chance, 13, right around there, of making the playoffs. So, as we talked about the Orioles being over 30, I don't think they're going to give in. I don't see the Marlins and Peter Bendix, who has been so diligent, just going like, all right, let's push our chips in. Like, I don't see that happening. I think they have enough surplus in the rotation that they could make a move out of that rotation and still, without sacrificing this year's team, and still be okay. They need a hitter. Like, honestly, if the Orioles were selling, Ward would make a lot of sense for them. If they want to eat some money, maybe they ask the Giants for a guy like Chapman, who I think of that three that are owed a ton of money in San Francisco, I think Devers, Adames, Chapman. I think Chapman is probably the most valuable. They're still going to have to swallow a bunch of money, San Francisco is. But I could see something like that happening for the Marlins. I don't think this front office is going to do anything outside of the plan. They have been playing well. I don't think they dismantle it by any means, but I think it's similar to like the Orioles in 23, right? Where they just made they added kind of, I think it was Jack Flaherty and Fujinami. So it was like very little moves, like a very little starter move, a very little bullpen move. You don't really give up anything. I see the Marlins doing that. I think they're not going to be in a position where they're going to fire sale. But if you look at their rotation, I think isn't Sandy this is his last year under team control. So I think he could be moved.
I think Sandy's very interesting actually, because he's got a club option for $21 million. And so there's a little bit of beauties in the eye of the beholder, because he's a bit of a innings eater at this point,
Yes,
and not
workhorse.
necessarily a 1 or a 2. But $20 million for a guy that will probably throw 180 innings next year is not a bad deal. And he's not
Right.
a 4 or 5. He's not a type that's got to take a 1 and 10. He's not one of those guys, I don't think. So he's kind of in between different models. Is he an ace you give, Snell money to, that kind of, you want to give him $200 million? No, I don't think so. But is he a 1 and 10 guy? No. So he's like this guy who's right in the middle, but he's under contract for next year for $20 million. I could actually see something where they try to thread the needle.
Yeah, and move him.
They sell and buy. And so the idea would be you sell Sandy Alcantara because A, he's your most expensive player, and B, he is the only one other than Pete Fairbanks that is kind of close to expiring and has trade value.
Yeah.
So if you find some trade value for Sandy Alcantara, you could sell him, but you could also buy in order to replace him in the short term. I like this idea of Chapman. Maybe you could go get Chapman and Robbie Ray. Now, Robbie Ray's expiring. I don't think he alone on the open market has a lot of trade value right now, because he doesn't look that good. But if you bring him over, you have some ideas for how he can pitch, and you've got Chapman. I don't know. It's the kind of thing where you're buying for next year and the year after. That's another thing that the Orioles did when they got Rodgers is, we're buying him for now, but he's got team control, and this is part of our building our team.
Yes.
If you look at the depth charts, for Fangraphs for projected WAR, they're in bad straits, actually. This is not one you want to look at if you're a Marlins fan. They are projected by WAR to be a bottom 5 team still. But you don't want to give away seasons just because you're not projected to be great and you are projected to be below average at 4 positions. You say, we've got these wins. Let's not throw away these wins, and let's see if we can improve one of those positions. The worst positions for them are first base, third base, and corner outfield. Seems like you could maybe get a player that's under team control for a couple of years if you thread the needle correctly.
I think there's also the benefit, though, of 5 more weeks to see what direction those odds go, right? If you continue to play as well as you have throughout June into July, maybe that changes your outlook a little bit as well. But if they're sitting in a similar position come deadline, I do think it's more likely to be one of those underwhelming, try to do both things sort of things, as opposed to that bigger, splashier, creative sort of thing where the Giants are eating money and sending you a player that you will have for a few years. Maybe you need that veteran leader, and you think that defense is going to be enough to carry Chapman's value the same way the Giants did when they gave him the extension, and you're not as worried about how the bat ages because you're going to get production from other parts
especially
of that
if you
lineup.
shave 25-30 million off of the deal, then it might look better.
Looks even better if you start having someone else foot the bill for it. We have to hit a quick break. When we come back, we're going to break down the Mariners. Why have the Mariners struggled to take over the AL West? Ryan Divish of the Seattle Times will join us when we come back. Now it is our pleasure to be joined by Ryan Divish of the Seattle Times. Ryan covers the Mariners, and we have been wondering all season long, Ryan, when will the Mariners finally hit the gas pedal and leave the rest of the AL West behind? So we'll dig into a bunch of questions with you. First and foremost, thank you so much for joining us today.
Happy to be on.
So they're one above 500. 40-39 is the record as we sit down here on Tuesday, June 23rd. A game and a half lead on the A's, game and a half up on the Rangers, 3.5 up on the Astros, who just don't seem ready to go away just yet. The strength continues to be run prevention and pitching, right? Mariners giving up just 3.9 runs per game. Only 4 teams, the Dodgers, Yankees, Braves, and Brewers, have been better. Like, what's the main thing that you think is going to be the focus of the trade deadline as a result of how this team is built right now? Because they've dealt with injuries in the position player group, and they're so healthy in the rotation that they're piggybacking everyone right now.
Yeah, it's in the last few years too, there's probably not been a GM that's been more aggressive, or I guess a Pobo that's been more aggressive than Jerry Dipoto at the deadline. Remember, there was Castillo several years ago, and then Randy Arozarena. Last year it was Naylor and Suarez. And I mean, like last year, especially, like they had 2 holes, first base and third base. There were 2 guys out there available. They got the trade for both of them. Like, how does that happen? Usually that never happens that way. But you look at the roster and it's a lot different. Obviously, they stink against left-handed pitching. I know, like, there's probably some regression to the positive coming. I think they're rolling like a 230 or 240 BABIP right now against lefty pitching. And they don't have all the, they have Randy Arozarena has been out for the last 10 days and such like that. But they've been struggling there. But you look at the roster and go, okay, where does this right-handed bat fit? You're not going out to get Wilson Contreras and giving up a bunch if you're not playing every day. But if you play him every day, then what happens to Dom Canzone, who actually has got a higher WRC plus than Wilson Contreras right now? I think the easiest fix, or the easiest thing that we'll address, is another leverage arm. Kind of build another, with Matt Brash out till about the trade deadline. Getting an arm that can get some swing and miss, I think, is ideal. You look at Andres Munoz, has not been great. He's been very hit or miss. His slider is good one game and not great the next. I think there's some confidence issues there. And then even like Jose Ferrer can be very Jose Ferrari at times, where it's like one game he looks like he's the greatest left-hander you've ever seen, and then the next game he's like he can't throw a strike. So I think that would be the easiest fix, or the most notable fix. Go get a bullpen leverage arm, maybe 2, maybe a middle innings guy and a leverage guy, and then kind of build your pen around that. From the position player standpoint, I don't really know what they're going to do. And then there's always the possibility too, like, hey, they're not going to roll this piggyback forever. My guess is they're going to roll it up till right after the trade, right up to the trade deadline. Maybe they can move Luis Castillo or somebody, because you can move Castillo to the bullpen, and now, they got Cade Anderson and Ryan Sloan sitting in Double-A carving up hitters. I think we'll see both of them in September in some form. So, like, it's really weird. You don't talk about teams right now and have an embarrassment of riches at starting pitching. Like right now at this point, everybody's looking for a starter or somebody that, you think about how many guys are throwing out a quad A guy as a number 5 starter, or using a bullpen start to piece things together. Here the Mariners are playing piggyback and all this other stuff, trying to figure it out. So I think reliever will be the one thing that they really look at.
Yeah, the starting to pitching thing is really interesting. It's got to be that Cade and Ryan Sloan are untouchable, right? Like, Keith Law had them as the top 2 pitching prospects in the game. Like, they're not trading those guys.
No, I can't see that, because you've got Logan Gilbert after this year will be 1 year to free agency. George Kirby's 2 years to free agency after this year, and really given no indication that he wants to be sign an extension. And the Mariners aren't. I don't know what their process is with starting pitching extensions. Where they're going to go with that. So I think keeping Cade and Ryan around to have for your rotation, your future is pretty prime. Would they consider moving Felnine Celestin, who's moved up a ton in the prospect rankings? I think he's probably their next most valuable prospect behind those two guys. Arroyo, Las Montes have some flaws. So yeah, would they consider that to get one of those guys? And would they move off the roster? That's another thing. Would they move somebody off the major league roster?
Right. That's what people have been calling for forever with the starting pitching, is to trade one of these starting pitchers. But it just feels like, you have in Gilbert, Kirby, and Wu, you have guys who are too valuable, and then in Castillo, you have somebody who's maybe like you might have to pay to trade.
Yeah.
There's a lot of money left on that deal.
And you're not trading Bryce Miller right now because he's
right.
Like
Bryce Miller is
guy.
like the one that could be the easiest to trade, but also you don't want to trade him. Hancock, you've got all the years of control left. So how do you see it resolving? Like, how do you think this starting pitching thing will resolve?
I think, their ideal thing is to trade Luis, if that happens. And, maybe it's a contract swap, a weighted contract for a weighted contract, not a bad contract, but he's owed a fair amount of money. They'd probably have to eat some money on it. They certainly have money. They can do that. I think that would be the easiest solution to the matter. And then you go from there. That's one thing that what happens in the offseason when Logan Gilbert's got 1 year left, most teams would move him, and the Mariners haven't been like other teams in terms of like keeping guys around. The prudent thing would be to move him. I guess you could keep him and then, offer him the qualifying offer and get your pick that way. That's what they're going to do with Randy Rosarena. But yeah, it's a tough decision. And Logan Gilbert has so much, cachet within that clubhouse. That's Cal Raleigh's best friend. And he is how he's throwing now, it'd be really hard to trade him. Like the Logan Gilbert, the last 3 outings is like, how do you get? And if couldn't go to Peoria to talk to Logan Gilbert about pitches every day, what's he gonna do?
Well, but it must have been Logan, because Logan Gilbert is like the captain of that situation, and because they seem so tight, it must have come from Logan that like to do this. Like everyone is like Logan and everybody. You said it was the word is unanimous, but like.
Mm-hmm.
I could see it coming from Logan, be like, "Hey guys, let's all do this,"
Well, if one of your best guys and like your opening day guy is willing to wear it and maybe get one of his starts piggyback, then you can't be the other guys and say, "No, I don't like this."
Exactly.
And really, and it's it gets romanticized a lot, but like being around these guys, they really do like each other. They are a group that watches every. I know you saw it in spring training, and you've seen it when we come to the Bay Area. They watch every single bullpen. Like if a starter is throwing a bullpen, all the other starters are out there and they stay there. And the guys have their own things going on, but even at home, they stay there. They watch every single pitch of every ball.
They share pitches. They like the splitter went like wildfire through that because they were like, "Oh, that looks nice. I'm gonna try it." They're
pitch dorks. They're pitching dorks. All of them, except for Castillo, who's like one of the coolest dudes. Like just chill. But even then, like he's there and he's got the different vibe that is really kind of necessary too. Sometimes it's just like go out there and have fun or whatever. So I think it's pretty genuine. I think the Mariners, from what I've been told, they offered him like variations of piggyback plans and like this modified 6-man, and none of them really liked all of it because of the amount of rest that would go in between the outings. And then the one they're using now where everybody kind of does it kind of limits, which is crazy. You're talking about guys don't want rest, but guys just don't want rest more than 6 days. 5 is kind of their max, and it really messes with their routine and their midweek bullpen. So as of now, it could be that Logan Gilbert, the reigning AL pitcher of the week, is going to be piggybacked on Saturday. That's a very possibility with Hancock. So, wow. It's just, it's not an ideal situation and fans hate it. And you're kind of wondering how it all works, but it's long range thinking in a game where, everybody's focused on the short-term results.
It's necessary though. It's what you have to solve the problem of the embarrassment of riches. You should be happy to have this problem if you're a Mariners fan.
Yeah, and if you have Castillo and you really want to trade him, his value is decreased if you put him in the bullpen now and he doesn't remain stretched out. Like no team wants him then, but like let's say if the Yankees or somebody gets have some guys get dinged up and they need an arm and they want somebody they know, will post every 5 or 6 days. That's the one selling factor with Castillo, and they can take the money on, or, and so that's like, you have to have him stretched out and be available for somebody that might need a starter.
Yeah,
there is some precedence for this. Is there the Haniger Ray?
Yeah.
Like, swapping some money around. They could do something like that.
I mean, like, I remember when the Mariners traded Carlos Silva for Milton Bradley, just a bad contract swap. Colton Wong for Jesse Winker. Those are some real winners there. I mean, like, but that's what, I mean, that's maybe what they have to do. I didn't get into like all the profiles of like available relievers now who would be out there, like, because it's like, who do we know that's truly selling? The Giants, right?
Yeah.
The Rockies. I mean, you would think the Rockies will be more active now with DiPodesta instead of the former regime. But like, who do we really know that's selling?
Yeah, I mean, I think Rockies, Giants, Mets haven't been able to commit to it yet. The Red Sox look like they're going that route, but it's still like they could play well enough to be close enough to a wild card and not do it. The Royals, and they don't have much to sell. We were looking at the Royals. They have guys signed a little longer than you'd like, older players on the rotation, like Waka in particular, and just it doesn't look like a good market for buyers because it looks like there's 20 teams that might be trying to get better, 5 teams that don't have much to move, and then eventually 5 teams that have a few players that everyone's going to fight over, which is pretty wild. You mentioned Hancock. I mean, he's been the pleasant surprise of the bunch, just getting the K rate up to 24%, got a 3.60 ERA and a 1.02 WHIP, and he almost feels like the extra guy in all of this, where like the performance levels of Bryce Miller right now is so high, you don't want to move him. Gilbert's so important to that group. Woo's so important to that group, but he's the pop-up guy. Like, is there a world in which Emerson Hancock gets traded either at the deadline or possibly this winter because maybe he has the least amount of long-term value within the organization, even though he has plenty of organization to other teams in need of a starter?
Yeah, I mean, the value is he's not making very much money. I mean, that's what, maybe they look at it and they structure it that way. A year ago at this time, roughly, I think he was starting to convert to reliever because they had kind of deemed him, they had kind of moved towards what they were going to do, and they needed, a reliever. Maybe a couple weeks later, but it was after the All-Star break. But I remember going down to Tacoma to talk to him about it. And it was when he was a reliever. They were in Atlanta. He watched Sale pitch, and he looked at where Sale was standing on the rubber and decided, I'm going to do this. I'm going to lower my slot and do this. And Pete Woodruff, the pitching coach, was like, yeah, that's a good idea. Like, we'll work on it this offseason. Next game, Emerson's on the other side of the rubber, just doing it anyways. Like, Lord, he goes, that's what these guys do. He's like, George will walk up. He goes, hey, I've been experimenting with this changeup. Okay, we'll test it out, see what it does. Nope, take it into the game. Let's just do it. So, I do think he has value because like he doesn't make a lot of money and he really does seem to turn the corner. I know he's had a couple of rougher outings lately. It's been walks, I think, really more than anything. When he's been really good, he's still giving up hits, but he hasn't had the free base runners that maybe have hurt him recently. But yeah, I mean, like, he's somebody that I'm sure teams are going to be calling on because, if you're trying to build, you want a younger guy that has big league experience, but you're not paying the freight on it. I mean, that makes a big difference.
Got one more question for you about Colt Emerson. What have your initial impressions been of him, a guy that signed the big extension already, got to the big leagues about as quickly as anyone does at this point? I think he's going through some pretty standard growing pains, but what are you seeing on a day-to-day basis from him so far?
He might have the greatest poker face I've ever seen. I even asked him about it. Like, are you good at poker? He's like, well, yeah, why? Because he never breaks. Like, you don't know if he's 4 for 4 or 0 for 4. He is the most serious kid I've ever been around at 20. Look, at 20, I was a total freaking moron. I mean, I was just an idiot. And this kid is in the big leagues and he's starting shortstop and it's like we kind of joked, he's got some Haniger qualities. Cause like when Haniger was in his prime, like when he was really good, we always joked that he was a cyborg because he was part robot. And once he went on the field, like it just robot machine went on. It was serious. He just was all business. Colt is like that. The moment he steps on the field, there's no smiling. There's nothing. He's about business. He is the most mature kid I've been around at that age. they've raved about it. And we saw it in spring and how he interacted with like guys. But when you see it at the big league level, it's so different. You know, Cole Young wasn't quite like that. He's a lot of dude and bro and like a little overwhelmed. Colt just doesn't. I think the one thing we've seen from him too is like he'll have he took the hat trick one day. The next day he comes back with a couple of hits. You ask him about it, and he's like, "Oh, my approach was fine. My approach was fine." He's like, "I'm not changing my approach just because I had one bad game. Like, I understood what I was supposed to do." He goes, "I stepped away from it," or he goes, "I got out." He goes, "I got into a bad count and I got forced into a situation, but I'm not changing my approach of who I am and what I'm going to do." And like, there are guys in their 30s that still search for that mentality, that don't react to the moment, and this kid just doesn't seem to do that.
Yeah, I feel like I'm 41 and I don't have that level of maturity yet, which is a concern. Concern for all parties involved. Ryan, thank you so much again for taking the time today. We really appreciate your time and your insight.
Thanks, guys.
All right, it kind of I get the feeling that the Mariners are going to do the thing we expect them to do, right? That depth is going to shine through over the course of the middle third and later part of this season. And it's certainly great to hear that the rotation is all on board with that piggybacking plan, because initially, when it was just the Castillo-Miller combo doing it, we talked about the frustration, the visible frustration of Castillo having to be removed early from starts to accommodate that.
Yeah, Divish made a great point, too, about it's not obvious where in the lineup to make an improvement. And that's a good sign, but it's also like, well, that's interesting. They're not the greatest offense. But, getting Randy Arozarena healthy will be a real big deal, because as a right-hander, I'm looking through that lineup. It's Arozarena, Cal Raleigh, and Robles are and Julio are the big right-handers. And so the rest of the players that are young and maybe not established, but are to the most part playing well, the Cole Youngs, the Dominic Canzones, those are all lefties. So you don't want to displace a young guy that you've given an extension to, that you've given a job to, right? And you're not displacing, Randy, Julio, Raleigh, those guys. So there's not an easy place where, like, I'm going to take a right-hander and put him, even a right-hander at third base, where you have J.P. Crawford and Brendan Donovan at some point. Like, I don't know. I think that they're not going to do much on the bat side. But if they can find a way to convert Castillo, I was thinking about the Padres a little bit. The Padres could be desperate enough for pitching where if you pay down half of Castillo's contract, could you pry one of their relievers away?
I think there's a few teams that maybe would line up. We talked about the Marlins earlier in the show. Like, that's the kind of thing, depending on the other moves, like maybe they could come up with something that works for them.
Fairbanks and like a bunch of money, and Castillo and a bunch of money for Fairbanks. I don't know.
Yeah. Again, a lot's going to change, though, between now and the deadline on the 3rd of August. I did mention up top, we got a little carried away with our game breakdowns. I did get a look at Yankees-Tigers, and mostly because of Garrett Cole. Just wanted to do a little check-in on him, and I was surprised at some of the loud contact the Tigers were able to get against him. But I think if nothing else, it just was locations being suboptimal, right? I mean, the stuff seems like it's coming back pretty good, especially in terms of velocity. Garrett Cole topped out at 99. I mean, so he had the 5 hardest thrown pitches in that game. I don't think this is a Garrett Cole's never coming back. I think this is just our standard reminder that it takes a little time for most guys coming off of TJ to put all of the pieces back together again. The overall results in the first 30 or so innings, nowhere near as bad as what we saw from Sandy Alcantara a year ago, for example.
Weirdly, it was his best game of the season by Stuff Plus, and he had a 110 location plus. Was it perhaps that he just, within the zone, was a little wild? Like he just wasn't quite putting it where he wanted to in the zone? You said there were a couple, there's a changeup. Riley Green went homer on a changeup, and Ken McGonigal got a couple hard hits high in the zone. Were those places where just supposed to be like 3 inches further away from where it was?
Yeah, I mean, like small mistakes that good hitters just took advantage of, right? We talk about the tilt that Riley Green has. Like the changeup was down, it just wasn't down far enough, and Riley Green had the kind of swing that was built to hit it out, and it was the kind of ball that it carried out by like I think it was out by about 15 rows. It was actually a pretty long home run to right center, but it was one of those skyscrapers. It was like, that was just a weird thing that I don't know if the Tigers have another hitter that could have put that swing on that pitch to get that result too. So I don't know. I'm going to remain patient with Gerrit Cole anywhere where I can be. I do think we talked about this, I don't know, a month or so ago, back when Framber got his suspension. When he's good Framber is a big difference maker, and he was good Framber against the Yankees. I realize it's a judgeless lineup right now, but to get 6 innings, a 1-run ball, 8 Ks from Framber, to get the curveball working as well as it was in that game on a Monday night. I mean, I think that's something that you are very excited to see as a Tigers fan trying to dig out of the hole you're in right now.
Yeah, they've been great in June. The Tigers have, and that lineup is not bad, and Framber was dealing, so it's when you look at teams over the last 30 days in terms of wins and losses, the Tigers are 14-12, but it's a little bit better, I think, even in the last 14.
Swept the White Sox over the weekend too, which was a pretty big series for them.
Yeah, 7-5 of the last 14. I don't know. I thought they had better numbers because there's kind of a meme going around about the gay Tigers because it's Pride Month and they're doing well in June. But I expected to see better numbers than I saw. But anyway, just staying above 500 is better than they were doing early in the season. And if they can kind of get it going, they'll make the Central more interesting.
That's I think that's exactly what they're on their way to do. Gleyber Torres going back on the IL does ding them up a little bit, but I like the way the lineup's coming together. Kerry Carpenter being healthy again helps. We talked about Dingler on Monday's episode. Colt Keith starting to find the power. Just a question of, I guess, maybe getting Spencer Torkelson back on track and getting some of the other secondary contributors to offer up a little bit more in the short term as well. It was a 4-out save from Will Vest on Monday night as well. I think getting Will Vest back to the effective high leverage guy he was a year ago goes a very, very long way in that bullpen. We need to go. On our way out the door, a reminder, you can join the Discord with the link in the show description. You can send mailbag questions in. We got plenty of room for those coming up. If it's a fantasy question, we'll probably get to it coming up on a weekend episode. There is one programming note, no episode this Friday, so we'll get a little more fantasy content in midweek. So a couple of changes to the schedule this week, but pretty much business as usual for most of the summer beyond that. Thanks again to Ryan Divish for joining us. That's going to do it for this episode of Rates and Barrels. We're back with you on Wednesday.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks for tuning in. Make sure to hit that subscribe or follow button so you never miss an episode. If you enjoyed it, drop us a like, leave a rating, or sound off in the comments. We'll see you next time.